If you're considering a move to Cape Coral, Florida, and you want to learn about the top 7 things I wish I'd known before moving down here, stick around. We'll talk about all that and more right now. Hey, welcome back and thanks for tuning in. If this is our first time meeting, my name is Marc Ammons. I'm a real estate agent down here in Southwest Florida. And on this channel, I talk all about what it's like to live, work, eat, sleep, and play right here on the Gulf Coast of Florida. If that sounds like something that you're into, go ahead and click subscribe down below so you don't miss any new videos when they get released. With that out of the way, let's get into today's video. All right, today I want to take you through a list of 7 things about living in Cape Coral that I wish I had known before moving down here that would have made things easier. And these range from minor inconveniences to things that are a little bit more serious. I'm confident you'll learn several things in here that'll save you time, money, and frustration. So stick with me to the end so you don't miss out. All right, so kicking off today's list with tip number 1 is going to be to schedule your DMV and tax collector office appointments as soon as you possibly can. If you're moving to Florida from another state and you need to become a new Florida resident, you're going to need to get your driver's license, your titles, tags, registration, complete voter registration, all the things that go into becoming a new resident, and all of that's going to happen at the tax collector's office, which is essentially the same thing as the DMV. Now, during the pandemic, they had shut down walk-in traffic to where it was by appointment only. They then went to a hybrid of walk-in and appointments, and now have gone back towards the end of 2021 to where it's by appointment only. Now keep in mind, these appointments may be booked out 2, 3, 4 weeks depending on the type of appointment that you need to get. And for a new Florida resident appointment, it's a fairly long appointment, so the wait times can be a little bit longer. So if you are gonna be moving down and wanna get this taken care of somewhat quickly, you may wanna even go ahead and have an appointment scheduled for yourself before that official move date. If you wanna see how far out the appointments are currently booked, you can go to the tax collector's website, click on schedule an appointment, then you can scroll down a little bit to make an appointment. From there, you'll be able to select the type of appointment that you'd like to make and then which office you'd like to do it at. Now, you don't have to go to the tax collector's office that's here in Cape Coral, even if that's where you're living. You can go to any one of the 5 that we have in Lee County, and so some of them may have longer wait times, some may be a little bit shorter, so you can pick and choose which one you want to go to. The one in Cape Coral is pretty convenient. It's centrally located here in the city, and the people there have been fairly helpful, but you may want to look around if you're trying to get a shorter wait time and see if one of those has it. Now, these appointments do require a fair amount of documentation that you bring with you to the appointments to make sure you can get everything taken care of. One of the important things that you may not be used to is if you're going to register your vehicle down here, you need to have that exact vehicle on site at the tax collector's office so that they can physically walk out and verify the VIN number matches on the car versus what it's going to be on the registration. So if you have multiple vehicles that you're trying to register, you need to make sure you have all of those vehicles at the DMV's office when you're doing this appointment, or you're going to have to schedule a new appointment to come back and register those vehicles as well. So if you're a family with multiple vehicles, make sure you have all the vehicles you want to register physically on site at the DMV's office the day of your appointment to make sure you can finish everything you need to do. So before your appointment, double check that you have all the documentation that they say you're required to bring, because I can tell you if you're missing even a single piece of documentation that they say you're required to have, they will not complete the transaction. They will send you home. You'll be frustrated. You'll find yourself back online scheduling another appointment for 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road, and you still have to bring that documentation the next time. So double check, triple check, bring more than what you need. If they give you multiple options for types of documentation that you can bring to support you, bring more than what they're asking for. Because you don't want to find yourself in the position where you get there, you've waited a month to do it, and then you still can't complete it. And while I know none of us look forward to going to the DMV, it's a great feeling when it's all finished. You've got your Florida driver's license in hand, you've got your new Florida license plate on the car, and all that's behind you. So if you are moving down here from out of state and you've got to go through this process, go ahead and start looking into it now about what it is you need to bring with you. Start doing your research, getting all that paperwork together. Some of the paperwork you're not going to be able to have until you're physically down here. That could be the deed to your house if you bought a new home. It could be a lease agreement, it could be a utility bill, something like that you're going to need to bring with you. But go ahead and start getting all that stuff gathered. Do some of the work now. It's going to make your life easier and less frustrating once you're down here. I think you'll look back and be grateful that you did. All right, so number 2 on our list is not something necessarily that you have to know before you move down here, because you will pick up on it once you move down. But that's the sheer number of restaurants in Cape Coral that you'll find that are going to be closed on Mondays. And this is not unique to Cape Coral. This happens all over the place. Mondays in general just aren't a very profitable day for restaurants, as they do a lot of their business, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday people are back at work, so it's not a hugely profitable day anyway. But I found in Cape Coral is even more so than other areas I've lived about the number of restaurants that are gonna be closed. And I think the big reason is a lot of the restaurants that we have down here are smaller family-owned restaurants with smaller staffs. The owners work in the restaurants themselves every single day. So by taking that Monday off, it gives them a chance to recover, their staff a chance to recover, and let them enjoy a lot of the things that we have down here in South Florida without having to be stuck in the restaurant all day. So I know it can be frustrating to walk up to your favorite restaurant that you wanted to go to, you pull on the door and it's locked. So just keep in mind, if you show up to a restaurant on Monday and they are closed, it's for good reason. Don't get frustrated, find another place to go. But my recommendation, if you're gonna go out to eat on a Monday and you don't know for sure that the restaurant's open, check their hours before you go. Get online, get on Google, and make sure that they're open before you head out there. It'll save you a little bit of frustration in the end. All right, so tip number 3 on our list has to do with traveling to and from Cape Coral via airplane. So right now, if you get online and you look for a flight either to Cape Coral or from Cape Coral, most likely it's going to try to take you out of RSW, which is Southwest Florida International Airport over in Fort Myers. Great airport to fly out of, one that I've flown out of many times. But a lot of people don't realize we actually have a smaller regional airport just north of us in Punta Gorda that has direct flights to a lot of cities that you're not going to have access to if you're flying out of RSW. So this opens up a lot of options depending on maybe where you're coming from. If you're trying to plan a trip to Cape Coral and you live in one of these cities that has a direct flight to Punta Gorda, it can save you hours on an airplane and probably a lot of money as well. So it's worth checking out if you are planning a trip here, or if you live here and you're planning a trip out somewhere else. But keep in mind that you are going to be a little bit more limited in terms of the airlines that are available to you. So Allegiant Airlines is the primary carrier that's going to be flying out of Punta Gorda. There's one other, Sun Country, but I think they really just fly straight to Minneapolis and back. And then there's Air Trek, which is more for chartered air flights. So Allegiant Airlines is the one that you want to be looking at. If you go to Allegiant's website, there's a map that shows all of the direct flights from Punta Gorda over to the various cities that they have. So it's worth checking out to see if that may be a more convenient option for you. Now keep in mind that Punta Gorda Airport is also a little bit smaller airport. It's a much smaller airport. So that makes some things easier, like parking. So your long-term parking is 100 yards from the actual terminal, so you don't have to deal with taking one of the vans from a long-term parking lot over to the terminal like you may at RSW. What you're going to find though with Allegiant Air is, although the fares may be cheaper and significantly cheaper, if you're just looking for a flight with no bells and whistles, you can get some really cheap direct flights, $55, $75 depending on where you're going one way. But you're going to get charged for a lot of little extra things that you kind of take for granted with some of the bigger carriers. Things like carry-ons, checked baggage. You are going to be paying for each of those things individually. Also, if you fly for business or you're a frequent flyer and you're used to flying on one of the major carriers, a lot of the perks that you may have built up from flying on that carrier over the years, you're not going to be able to utilize by flying out of Punta Gorda if you're just going to be using Allegiant. So although you're going to be a lot more limited in terms of options by flying out of Punta Gorda with Allegiant Air, in terms of the cities that you can go to, how many flights per day are available, the carriers that you want to go on, RSW is going to have Delta, American, Southwest, United, Spirit Airlines, a lot of the ones that you're used to flying with. You're going to have those options at RSW. You might not have as much variety at Allegiant. However, some of the convenience that's available to you by flying out of Punta Gorda and going direct to cities that you may not have the option to fly direct to out of RSW can be a huge benefit. So my recommendation is, if you are flying into Cape Coral or you're in Cape Coral and you're looking for a flight out, go ahead and explore both options just to see if there's one that might be a better fit for you and your specific needs. Again, you might be a little bit more limited on the variety that you get in Punta Gorda. However, some of the convenience factor that comes into play can be a huge benefit. So depending on where you're coming from, it could be a great option. It might save you a little bit of time and money along the way. All right, so number 4 on our list of things to know before you move to Cape Coral is to try to understand how the city's laid out and how our roads are named. If you spend any time either in Cape Coral or looking at us on a map, you've probably seen addresses like 1936 Southwest 35th Avenue and try to understand what that is. It can be kind of confusing if you're not familiar with how the city's laid out. So big picture, the city's divided into 4 quadrants. So we have the southeast, the southwest, the northeast, and the northwest. And there are some major roads that run through the city that divide these 4 quadrants out. So running north to south is Santa Barbara Boulevard. That separates the East Cape from the West Cape. And then running east to west is Hancock Bridge Parkway, a little bit of Pine Island Road, and then Embers Parkway. and those roads separate the North Cape from the South Cape. So that's what gives us our 4 quadrants. So essentially the intersection of Santa Barbara Boulevard and Hancock Bridge Parkway is the exact center of the city. And then from there, as you get farther away from the center of the city, all the street numbers are going to continue to get bigger. Then you have to learn that avenues, boulevards, courts, and places are roads that run north to south. Then you have to learn that roads, parkways, terraces, streets, and lanes are going to run east to west. But once you understand all of that, these addresses that we have make a lot more sense. So you know what quadrant someone's in. After a while, you have a general idea of how far away 35th Avenue is, or 54th Place, or something like that. You have an idea of how far away that is from the city center, and then whether it runs east to west, north to south, based on whether it's a street, terrace, lane, parkway, boulevard, avenue, and all of that. So you can figure it out, but generally when you first move here, it's gonna be a little bit confusing. You're also gonna run into something where you may be on 35th Avenue, and you may only be on 35th Avenue for a quarter mile, and 35th Avenue may end because you're gonna dead end into a canal. Well, 35th Avenue continues, but it's on the other side of the canal. So you may need to make several turns to get from where you're at on 35th Avenue to get back on 35th Avenue on the other side of this canal. While we do have some roads that have bridges that go over the canal, depending on where you're at, a lot of the roads are just gonna dead end into the canal and then pick back up on the other side of that canal. So it can be a little bit confusing at first. The longer you're down here, the easier it gets to navigate around the city. It's actually a pretty simple city to navigate once you're here. So generally speaking, when you're driving around the city, you're gonna do the bulk of your driving on one of the main roads that either runs east to west or north to south for the bulk of your trip. So you're gonna be down south on Cape Coral Parkway or Veterans, Trafalgar, Pine Island if you're going east to west. If you're going north to south, you're gonna be on Del Prado, you're gonna be on Santa Barbara, Skyline, Chiquita, one of those. That's gonna get you pretty close to your final destination, and then you're gonna hop over on some of the side streets that have the more residential areas to get where you're going. So my recommendation is this: before you move down, spend a little time on Google Maps, figure out how the city's laid out, get a general ballpark idea of where it is that you're gonna be living and how you're gonna get to all the main areas that you're gonna be going. It's a lot easier to kind of visualize that ahead of time before you get down here, and then once you're down, it's gonna make a lot more sense that, hey, you know you're on the East Cape and you gotta get over to the west side, you're gonna hop on one of these main roads, and all that's just gonna make a little bit more sense for you. So spend a little bit of time before you come down, start to understand how the city's laid out, and you'll thank yourself for doing it later. All right, so tip number 5 of things you want to know before you move to Cape Coral is to get an understanding of how the lawn irrigation schedule works. Depending on where you're from now, you may be able to water your lawn if you have an irrigation system as often as you want, as long as you want, at whatever time you want. But down here in Cape Coral, there's a fairly strict schedule that you have to follow if you have a lawn irrigation system regarding when you can water your lawn using that irrigation system. The schedule is available on the city's website, and basically it's broken down by your house address. So they take the last digit of your street number, and that determines what day and at what time you can water your grass. So generally speaking, you're gonna be able to run your irrigation system 2 days a week for up to 4 hours at a time. And that's usually either gonna be from midnight to 4 a.m. or from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. So depending on where you come from, it may seem strange that the city tells you how often and at what times you can use your irrigation system, but keep in mind that the city of Cape Coral has one of the largest municipal residential irrigation demands of almost any city in the country. So we do use a lot of water for irrigation down here, and we have to make sure that we're protecting the sources that we're getting that irrigation water from. So the irrigation water that we use down here is not the same water that you're using inside your house, in your shower, in your sink, and things like that. It's non-potable water, meaning you can't drink it, and it's coming from one of 3 sources, typically either reclaimed from one of our waste treatment facilities, it's coming from one of our freshwater canals, lakes, or retention ponds, or it's coming from a private well. So you may be in a house that either currently has a well or that had a well previously and was then converted to city water. You still have the option to use that well to use it for irrigation. So one thing to note on that is, since we do use those freshwater canals and lakes as a source for our irrigation water, if you do live on a freshwater canal, understand that the levels of that canal can vary throughout the year. So during the rainy season, you can get those things up pretty high. But if we do get some dry spells, particularly if everyone's still irrigating their lawns, the level in those canals can drop. So unlike the saltwater canals, where really the only fluctuation is more with the tides, you are gonna have some natural fluctuation as a result of water usage being pulled out of those canals to service other areas of the city. So just keep that in mind. And that's one of the big reasons that the city does want to control how much water is actually being used by these irrigation systems, because we don't just want to drain all of our canals dry. We want everyone to still be able to enjoy all the great things about living on the water. So they do control how much and how often you can use those systems. So keep in mind that this watering schedule is not just a polite recommendation. It is an enforceable code within the county. So if you're caught violating it and you're either watering for longer or more days a week or outside the time that you're allowed to, you can be issued either a warning or a citation from city code enforcement. Does it happen often? Not necessarily, but when things do start to dry out and we really start to see a change and a drop in those water levels in particular, that's when code enforcement is going to be a little bit more active about looking for people who are overwatering and using more water than they should.
So far this month, Cape Coral's Code Compliance Department has issued 350 notices like this one to people who were caught breaking the city's watering ordinance. And if residents don't start following the rules, this notice could soon come with stricter consequences.
So keep that in mind. You don't want to find yourself with a citation from code enforcement just for watering the lawn too much. You also do have the option to hand water. So if you want to go out there and just water things by hand, you can do that also. And then generally for like a new construction home, I believe there's a 45-day grace period where you can water every single day for the first 45 days, so you can help get that lawn established. Pretty much every house down here is going to have sod put down as a new construction home, and those sod lawns do need a fair amount of water to get rooted. So if you do have a new construction home, don't necessarily sweat it. You can water for the first 45 days after that house has been put in and after that lawn's been established. But outside of that, follow the recommendations. It benefits everybody, and again, you don't want to find yourself getting a citation for watering outside of that. If you don't know how to set up your irrigation system, if you do have one, a quick search on YouTube will get you all the information you need. You can probably learn how to do the whole thing in 10 to 15 minutes. But if you're not comfortable with it, ask a neighbor. They're probably more than happy to help. Or if you have a lawn maintenance company that does your lawn maintenance, those guys are generally really good at setting up these systems. They know the schedule of when your house is supposed to be getting irrigated, so they can go ahead and set that up for you. You don't have to worry about it at all. But anyway, hopefully you found this tip helpful, and hopefully it saves you a little bit of money in the long run. All right, so tip number 6 of things that you want to know before you move down to Cape Coral has to do with our trash pickup. So there's one company that does all of the trash pickup and waste management for the city of Cape Coral. That company's called Waste Pro, and they do everything. So they're picking up your trash, your recycling, if you have bulk pickup, if you have furniture, pretty much anything that's in your house that's getting discarded, it's probably gonna get picked up by Waste Pro. The nice thing about this is there is some uniformity throughout the city, so there's one company handling all of it. They're contracted directly with the city, and overall they do a very good job. They had some issues during the pandemic, as did almost every company, of labor shortages. They didn't have enough drivers and guys working, so things did get a little hectic for a while. And if you see some bad press and bad news about Waste Pro, a lot of that dates back to more the early part of the pandemic when they just really were understaffed. The guys work very, very hard. You know, the quality of service you're gonna get, it's gonna depend on who your particular route driver is, but generally speaking, I think they do a great job. There are some things I'll mention to look out for that can make your experience a little bit better, but Waste Pro is gonna handle all of your waste management. So the trash cans that you're using at your house are gonna come from Waste Pro. Now, again, with pandemic stuff, supplies are short. It takes a long time to get things. So if you're moving down to Cape Coral, go ahead and call Waste Pro well in advance of moving down here. Let them know what your address is and when you're going to be moving in, so that they can go ahead and get a can ordered for you. Because some of these trash cans may be back ordered 2 to 3 weeks. You don't want to move down here and right off the bat have nowhere to throw your trash away. So get on there early, get your trash cans ordered, your recycling cans ordered. One of the biggest tips I can give you, and what I have found, is that as long as the stuff that you have is inside of the cans, they're going to do a great job of picking it up every single time. The biggest struggle I've had has been with recycling stuff. So particularly right after you move down, you have a lot of moving boxes and a lot of cardboard. You're breaking all of that down. It's not gonna fit into the single recycling can that you have. So what you're gonna find yourself doing is breaking down the boxes, say leave one big box still put together, put all the other boxes in that. I can tell you from experience that depending on who your driver is, that stuff may not get picked up when it's supposed to. You may find yourself calling Waste Pro. I've had to call Waste Pro a number of times to get stuff picked up that wasn't picked up. But what I have found is that their customer service has always been extraordinarily friendly, very helpful, and many times they'll either set up a same day or a next day pickup to correct an issue if there is one. So although they may not get it right 100% of the time, they do seem like they try hard to provide that good customer service and make sure that you're taken care of. But big tip, put as much of the stuff that will fit in the can as possible. But again, it's kind of nice. You really don't have to worry about, you know, putting everything in the car or driving it to the dump or a landfill. We don't have a landfill here in Cape Coral. If you're looking for a landfill or a dump or transfer station, whatever you want to call it, that you can actually physically take stuff to, you're going to find yourself going out to Fort Myers to do that. Again, kind of the nice thing about living in Cape Coral is we don't have that stuff here. So we don't have a big landfill taking up space in the city. So there is some benefit to that. But for the most part, if you've got something, put it at the end of your driveway. There's some guidelines on the website about how to handle stuff that won't fit in the can. So again, it's worthwhile to read through that, understand what they're looking for. It's going to make your life easier and limit the number of times you've got to call them to get stuff picked up that wasn't picked up properly. But order your cans early, and then just, again, try to follow the regulations on the website, the recommendations that they give about how to have your stuff picked up, and you won't have any problems. All right, so we made it to the end of our list with tip number 7 here about things you should know before moving down here to Cape Coral. And I've never heard anyone else talk about this one, and I wish they would, because it would save people a lot of frustration. So hopefully this will help you out if this applies to you. And it has to do with Halloween and trick-or-treating and how it's done down here in Cape Coral, which is likely different than where you're at now, or different in some other places even close by down here in Florida. So when I was a kid, and even with my own kids in other places that we've lived, you know, Halloween comes around, you get the kids in their Halloween costumes, you go out to your local neighborhood, go door to door, you know, houses are decorated, trick or treat, get your candy, go home. Cape Coral is a little bit different. We tried to do that our first Halloween here, and we started going around to all of our neighbors, and either no one was home, they didn't have candy, houses weren't decorated, and it was almost like Halloween really wasn't a thing. And you'll find in some cities they don't do Halloween on October 31st. If it falls on a weekday, they'll do it on a weekend or something like that. That's not the case down here in Cape Coral. We do Halloween on Halloween. We don't push it to a different day. No matter what day of the week it falls, that's the day we do it. But you can't just necessarily walk out your front door and start going to your neighbors' houses and expect them to have candy and be ready for your kids to trick or treat. So this all dates back to when Cape Coral was a much younger city. There weren't as many people living here, as much more sparsely populated, and there was so much space between one house to the next that it really just didn't work to do your traditional trick-or-treating down the street, because you may only get to 3 or 4 houses, you know, as far as you could see. And it doesn't seem like things have changed now that the city is a lot more populated. And there are still some areas in the city, particularly in the North Cape, where you do have a good bit of distance from one house to the next. So what they did was there were certain areas in the city that were more populated, and that's just where everyone ended up going. Pelican, which is in the South Cape, kind of central in the Cape, is one of the areas where a lot of people started going back in the day. And that really hasn't changed. So a lot of those old traditions of people really going to just a few select areas throughout the city to do their trick-or-treating really hasn't changed. So if you walk out your front door and expect to go to some of your neighbors' houses right down the street and have them be ready for trick-or-treaters, they're probably not gonna be, because they may not have gotten a trick-or-treater in years because people just go to these certain areas. So it's something to know. If you live in a gated community, we do have a few of those here in Cape Coral. Most of those are gonna do their own thing. So if you live over in Sandoval or something like that, you're gonna have your own Halloween within your community. That's a great time. There are some other communities around here that, again, are open to hosting people from around Cape Coral. Heatherwood Lakes is one in the Southwest Cape that does a huge Halloween. So pretty much every single house in that neighborhood, the neighborhood's really kind of a big circular neighborhood with houses that go around it and some lakes in the middle. They do a phenomenal job. They really go above and beyond on the Halloween stuff. So keep in mind, there's some great things to do here on Halloween if that's your holiday and you enjoy the trick-or-treating and taking the kids out, or even if you're an adult and you just like getting dressed up and going out and seeing all the costumes, you do have some good options. But understand that it might not necessarily be in your little part of Cape Coral and the houses around you where they're doing that. If you're on any of the Cape Coral Facebook pages that exist, you'll find a lot of helpful information around Halloween time about kind of where things are happening to give you a little bit of a heads up, but it's not something most people tell you about. So once you get out to these locations, I'm confident you're not going to be disappointed. I know personally some of the best Halloween decorations and costumes that I've seen have been down here in Cape Coral. It is an absolute great time. It's just consolidated in certain areas throughout the city. So don't necessarily expect to be able to walk right out the front door to some of the houses to the left and right of you and have this big Halloween celebration. You're not necessarily going to find that. You may have to travel a little bit inside the city to get to one of the more popular areas where a lot of the people are going. But once you get there, it's a great time. I think you're really going to enjoy yourself. So just keep that in mind. I hope this helps save you a little frustration and maybe your kids some disappointment. Your first Halloween down here. So that's the end of our list. Again, I hope it's been helpful. Hope you've learned something. I hope there's been something in here to save you some time, money, or frustration on your move to Cape Coral. So if you are considering a move down here to Cape Coral and you want to learn more not only about what it's like to live, work, eat, sleep, and play, but you want to learn how to navigate our housing market and get the best house for the best price for you and your family to call home, I would love to work with you. I'd love to be a part of your home search and a part of your relocation from where you're at now down here to Cape Coral. Please reach out to me at whatever's best for you. Give me a call, send me a text, shoot me an email. I'm happy to hear from you and happy to work with you. And in the meantime, if you did find this video helpful, it'd mean a lot to me if you did go ahead and give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the new videos when I get released. And leave me a comment down below about which of the 7 things we went over you think is gonna be the most helpful for you if you make a move down here to Cape Coral. As always, thanks for tuning in, be well, and I'll see you on the next one.